Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Mochammad Alfat Rafif Yumna. My student card number is A320200148. Today I will be delivering my presentation of the discourse analysis on the speech act theory. Please enjoy. Now, what can we infer from speech act theory? Well, in order to first understand about speech act theory, we must first learn about the prime discipline upon which it was learned, which is called discourse analysis. Now, discourse analysis is one of the disciplines, in fact, that was created in the 1970s. It was created alongside anthropology, linguistics, semiotics, psychology, sociology, and mass communication research. Stubbs defines discourse analysis as a study which concerns language use beyond the boundaries of a sentence or utterance, the interrelationships between language and society, and the interactive or dialogic properties of everyday communication, which means that, as we can see on the next page, which means that it incorporates several different theorems from the modern linguistic analysis alongside those beyond of the sentences. Now, this can be inferred as a hybrid field of inquiry. Thus, it uses both the phonetics, the morphology, the syntax, the semantics within a grammatical structure, whilst also incorporating the conversational exchange between the written text, the cultural interrelationships, and its accordance between language and a society, and in particular, the interaction between speakers. Now, discourse analysis is not just a method, but it's also a perspective on the nature of language, a mixture of approaches that entails not only practices of data collection and analysis, but also meta-theoretical or theoretical assumptions. It is not just a theorem, but it's also a factoid, a perspective, and a matter of fact in which we are able to enunciate our verbal utterances onto others. Since this is an analysis and therefore quantifiable data, the recorded data is in the form of a linguistic output from written text or tape recordings. These data are called performance data. This data includes hesitations, slip-ups, and non-standard form of verbal utterances. And so we can think of this less of a rigid structure in how a person talks and more in the how they use the language in the manner they talk. Mistakes such as stuttering in this case, such as what I just used right now, can be inferred as a form of discourse analysis. Moving on, we should go to the speech act theory. Now, there are several theorems. They are posited by two individuals. One is by Austin in 1975, and the other is May in 1993. Austin posits the theory of speech act theory, which is another form of discourse analysis, in that language is a mode of action, as it means to convey information. This places the importance on what the uttered means by his utterances rather than what his utterance mean in the target language. It is a performance of what it actually means as a context rather than what it actually mean grammatically. It explains actions via utterances, not just uttering utterances. Thus, it enunciates, it performs an act. Charlie and May enhances this and strengthens this particular theory by saying speech acts are the basics or minimal units of linguistic communication. And the first thing one should notice is that speech acts are actions happening in the world. They bring about a change in the existing state of affair. While most act of functional union is a human communication, the true usage of language is to perform acts. This can be strengthened in this particular observation that was done by Austin in 1975. Austin once observed in 1975 that sentences are not always used to report state affairs. Some are used in the performance of an act that is appropriate to the context. These are called ceremonial or ritual speech acts, such as the naming of a particular building, the ennobling of an individual. These are called ceremonial acts. These acts do not function in communicating, but rather in affecting institutional state of affairs by judicially asserting a particular act. These can be performed under the conditions. 1. The existence of an accepted conventional procedure having a certain conventional effect, thus something that is already existent within the cultural norm. 2. The presence of a particular persons and circumstances, like the existence of a judge, jury, and also the masses that are witnessing a trial. These can be considered of particular persons, and the circumstances is the trial itself. The correct and complete executions of a procedure, which can only be judged through felicitous or infelicitous. And lastly, certain thoughts, feelings, or intention. Yule in 1990 calls these felicity conditions in which a ceremonial or a ritual speech can act. Now, second is the ordinary speech act. Differs from the ceremonial or ritual speech. These acts are the acts that happens in the daily life, such as offering an apology, greeting, request, complaint, invitation, compliment, or refusal. Now, there are two examples presented in the PowerPoint. First is sorry. Now, in an ordinary speech act, the singular word to perform an apology is already sufficient. The intent is very clear. It is in order to convey an apology. Now, the second one is I'm sorry, I forgot your birthday. It just slipped my mind. Now, several sentences are used in order to convey a sincerity within an apology. These two examples are very similar to one another, but the differences lies in how much sentences they used. But the contexts are very much similar. Thus, they can be used interchangeably dependent on the cultural context of the situations. For example, speakers expect listeners to recognize the function of the intent behind utterances and to act accordingly. These are often aided by the circumstances surrounding the utterances. These are called speech event. Yule in 1990. Now, it requires not only knowledge of the language, but also the cultural appropriateness behind the usage of the language. Just because you're able to speak English fluently, if you are unable to possess cultural nuances within said language, you won't be able to use it effectively. Mostly in a formal greeting, you will be able to greet, meet, make apologies, things of that sort. But in order to make a meaningful conversation, one must be able to use ordinary speech act, which is cultural norm in which a person uses the language in a manner that would make sense to a listener. Now, what does this mean? In summary, the speech act theory is concerned with what people do with language. The function focused upon are the communicative intention, and it provides a framework to identify the condition behind an utterance as a particular linguistically realized action. Thus, we all can be sure that in order for a speech act theory to happen, context is extremely important. Just as the former, which is the ritual and the ceremonial, would require a particular event in order for it to happen, so too does the normal ordinary speech event would require something that is far more casual and far more communicative rather than singular speech that the ceremonial speech act is using. Thank you very much for your attention for today. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.